Okay, welcome back to the cabin once again for a glimpse into the early American home. I'm talking about the early American cook stove. So unlike the fireplace that can burn a mass amount of wood at one time, the early American cast iron, wood-fired or coal-fired cook stove is designed to use very little fuel, but accomplish a certain task. And of course that task is cooking. So let's dive into that. Normally that's it, just one strike of a match and it's off to the races. Now, if it starts smoking too much out the top until that gets warmed up, I can close this. There it goes. Because the chimney is not warm enough yet, so the smoke is coming out the top of the stove until that gets warmed up. So I can close this. My bellows a little big for the job, but because the fireplace is burning behind me and drawing so much air out of the chimney, it actually starts to pull air down any place it can get it. So that makes this a little bit more difficult to get running, but we will be able to get it. Let's give it a little bit of air and see what we can do. We're not going to worry about a little bit of smoke. No, let's try to close it up. I don't know if you can hear that, but you can hear the fire getting sucked back and right up the chimney. Should be able to show you that as well. If I remove this, I should be able to lay this piece of glass on there. Do it without getting burnt. And now you can see how the fire is coming from the firebox, going right over and right up the flue. Now I did install a damper on this so that I can control the amount of draft in that chimney. If you watch as I slow this back, you'll notice the fire is starting to go slower and slower and slower and slower and slower until it dies down. Now it's starting to smoke. But so what's happening? We're burning the wood. The wood's making gases. The gases are being ignited all the way across. So if I switch this, trying to put that someplace where it's out of the way. If I switch this now, because the chimney's plenty hot enough now, if I switch this, you'll notice the direction of that smoke change. Now that smoke, instead of being drawn from the firebox and back the flue, it's being drawn across the top. And now it's a lot slower because it's coming across the slot top and it's being sucked down this wall right beside the oven and then across the bottom and then back up through. And it takes a lot more energy. But what it does is it releases the heat. That heat is being released into the surface a lot better now that it is traveling across the top and down the side. Now I do not have flames reaching this point yet. I pretty much have flames ending about where my glass is. I can see it through a crack right here, but I have a hole here I can peek into too, and there's no flames there yet. I should be able to increase that flames by giving it a little bit more air on the top here. If I give that a little bit more air, give it a little bit more oxygen across the top, you'll start to see those flames extend a little bit further and go down through there. I'm actually starting to see the flame now through here. So let's do this. Let's try to slide that glass off of there and move one of these to there so that you can see the fire as it comes across while I'm getting ready to slice up some potatoes to get my breakfast cooked. So let's open up the flue. Now watch, as I open the flue, you'll see the fire go back that direction again. Completely change the direction of that fire. That fire now comes up and goes right back into the chimney. So now the air is going in that hole and trying to go back there, but yet you're spilling some fire out the top. So now I'm going to put it on this one. And I just have to block the air from going through, but yet give you a way to see. That's why I'm using that piece of glass. Now let's get this out of the way. And now when I flip that back over, as long as I have enough energy, you'll start to notice that fire come all the way across the top and go down that side. I just have to have enough energy in the fire to do that. Enough leftover gases that are trying to burn up as it goes across the top. Let's give it a little bit more fuel just so I can show you that. Open this. Open this. We're going to try to give it a little bit more. Now you can really hear it roaring. So now if I flip this to close that door, now you can see that fire going all the way across the top and going down this side of the fireplace. Or wood stove, excuse me. And I'm just cooking for me, so I'm just going to put 2 potatoes in there. Just that quick. Taters. What is it that my mama used to always tell me? If you can't take the heat, get out of the kitchen. It's time to lose the long sleeve shirt. I'll tell you what, you know, I just shot a video about the fireplace and how they're really not an effective heat producer. This thing, on the other hand, is meant to produce heat across the board, whether it's for cooking or even there are homes that this was their sole source of heat for forever. You know, once they started building things like this is how they heated their homes. Now, it was a lot of work, because you had to get up and build a new fire. If you fell asleep, you just build a new fire every time, because that firebox is so tiny. So over in this corner is where I keep all of my cast iron that I use. I do have a pile of stuff that's kind of duplicates of what I have that is out in the back kitchen, but these are the ones that I use for cooking. If I'm just going to do an egg or a couple eggs, I'll use this little one here. I've got it seasoned just absolutely perfect. If I'm going to make waffles, of course, I'll use the waffle iron. If I'm going to cook chicken and some vegetables, well, then I use this one. It's my favorite for that. If I'm going to cook a giant meal, multiple people, potatoes, bacon, then I use the big one back here. Let me get it down. It's a little challenging to get down with this thing being hot. So normally I plan that out beforehand, and I forgot. Because it is definitely a two-hander. And I use that one in the fireplace as well. For this video, because I'm doing potatoes, which like a lot of surface area to brown quicker, we're gonna go ahead and use the big one. I'm torn between this one and this one, but we're gonna just use the big one. Time to get rid of the glass. Y'all will get it. My sister made me those quite a few years ago, actually. I take that off to increase the temperature under this side of the pan, so I get a hot spot underneath the potatoes. So while that's cooking, I've got two spatulas. And you know how we're always trying to reinvent something? This is an old spatula from the old days. It's got a tag on it, but I don't even have a clue what it says. I never looked at it. This is a spatula that somebody tried to reinvent the spatula. So with this one, when you're flipping an egg, of course you have to flip it by hand. This one, you just squeeze, and the egg flips itself. Now, I don't have a problem flipping my egg, but when I found this at a flea market, which we're going to do some walks through the flea market this summer, when I found this at a flea market, I'm like, yeah, I got to buy that. And I think it was only $1 or $2. They didn't know what they had, right? An automatic spatula. So anyway, when it comes time to cook the egg, we're gonna use our automatic spatula and just see how well it works. Very last thing I want is my bacon to be overdone. I'm not a big fan of super crunchy bacon. I like it a little bit on the tender side. So. How about you, Lavender? Archie? Just put it in the warming oven for now. That'll give me more surface area to work the potatoes on. So the hottest spot's going to be right here because that's where the disc is going. The bacon is still hot, but let's get it back in there, off to the side as well. Okay, I watched this horrible movie, and I don't even know the name of it. It was so bad I wanted to leave the theater. But in that same horrible movie, I learned a tip about cracking eggs. And it actually works. And it was, what is the best way to crack an egg? And the answer was on a flat surface. So I would always crack them on the edge of a pan, but it turns out that if you crack them on a flat surface, it cracks the shell better, and it like is perfect every time. Because it chars that, and it just, the egg breaks perfect every time. Would not have known it if I wouldn't have sat through that horrible movie. A little salt for my egg. I don't have a salt shaker, and I don't do pepper. Don't like pepper. Okay, we're almost ready to try the automatic egg flipping spatula. I have no idea who made it. I have no idea when it was made. All I know is I found it at a flea market. And they say the way to tell if your cast iron is seasoned properly is if you can cook an egg in it without it sticking. You got to be careful with your bacon though. If you cook a lot of bacon in a pan, it'll leave a residue on the bottom that will actually make your egg stick. So that's why typically I'll cook my bacon in a different area and then clean it real good after I'm done cooking. All right, I think we're ready to go. All right, there you go. So supposedly all I do is squeeze it. Look at that, huh? Perfect every time. Not that I couldn't have done it with the other one. I'm gonna plate it, but not bore you with having to watch me eat it. I am gonna eat it while this is cooling down, then we'll tear this thing apart and get a good look at it. Okay, there you go. A breakfast made for a man. Forgot to toast. Fix that real quick like. Shouldn't take long against that kind of heat. If I was to move this log right here. Expose that ember pile a little bit better. Now, real quick. Yeah, that's what we wanted. Just a hair more. That's smoking hot. Just a little more. Hey, bud. She got a piece of bacon off the floor, huh? Got a piece of bacon off. Oop. Can't take your eyes off of it. It'll be burnt. Now we have toast. You can't see him, but Archie took my chair. Okay, there. Now that is a breakfast. Ready for next time. And it's still pretty hot. It's not real hot, but I just wipe out all the bacon grease. and then we hang it up. And I'll be honest, when I get it off of the wall, next time I will wipe it out to get rid of the dust that might have landed in it just from being hanging up there for a week. I do not scrub this thing at all. I don't scrub any of them unless, because there's so many, some of them will hang up there long enough that they'll draw moisture and it'll take the seasoning off. If the seasoning is gone and there's a little bit of surface rust in there and I have to re-season it, then of course I give it a good bath and get it ready. But this one tends to hold a seasoning really good and never needs anything. So now it just gets hung back up, and this thing is still, it's cooling down, but it's still very hot. And now the skillet's hot too. So I've got 2 nails back there that I hang this baby on. And let's see if I can get them without getting burnt. There you go. Done. That's all I do with that thing. Okay, we're gonna call this bonus footage because I know most people are probably not gonna watch, but someone out there would like to see the different channels that the fire and the smoke travel through. So I'm gonna run you through all the different things by removing pieces off of it so you can actually see it. So the first one is that underneath these 2 doors and the centerpiece is your firebox. This is the area that you build your fire in. So you could do one of 2 things. When you're filling it, you can do it the way I did through the front, or you could just take this off and stuff all your wood in there, light it on fire and put that cap back on, and that'll be good for you. Also, this top door that I was using for a vent is also another place that you can feed small pieces of wood through. If you needed to bump your temperature up, you could very easily take a piece of wood like this and just drop it right in there. I don't want to leave that in there too long because it will catch on fire. It's still pretty hot. So anyway, that is another way to feed your wood into it. Staying with that side, this is the side that's closest to the wall that you really can't see. You've got an air vent on top as well, and on the bottom. You also have an ash pan that comes out under the hearth and your door for your ashes. So now you've got a big pit down here for your ashes to build up in. With wood burning, you don't get that much ashes, but if you were using this for coal, then you do. So that's why it's so big. Okay. Let's move on. I'm going to take these all completely off of here. And again, I can't touch them. They're still, cast iron takes a while to cool off, so they're still pretty hot. So then we have our next layer is just exactly the same. All these pieces are interchangeable, so it doesn't really matter where they go. And then this one comes off as well. These are the pieces that were warped up really bad when I got it. Warped up, cracked up, and you really, they do not manufacture this thing. So it's been out of business for years. Spence-Baggs Company in Martins Ferry, Ohio. 1927 is when this one was manufactured. Or, excuse me, is when the castings for this were produced. Because that's the date that's on it. So then now we have this is the top of your oven, this is your firebox. Here's that door that we told you about. So here's that door that you're opening and closing. Take off another layer. Some of these are in really bad shape. The pieces are busted off of them. And those you can get. They're interchangeable, so I could find a couple of those. But these pieces and those pieces are virtually impossible. Okay, that's my entire top off of this thing where you can see the top of the oven. And this is the channel. The cameras that I've been using are really good at using the light that they have. I used to use GoPros, they were horrible. But these new Insta360s, Ace Pro 2s, they really are good at, because this cabin is super dark, and they're really good at utilizing the light that they have. So we're gonna try it with this. So this side, and I'm careful, little wax strips in here, it'll just burn off. The fire comes across the top and goes down this side, down into here. So then it goes down this side. After it goes down this side, it goes down to the bottom. So it goes across the top and down this side, right down here, in between. Wow, that was still hot. So this is my oven. So in between here and the outside, there's a channel that smoke can come across and go straight down. And then it comes across underneath the oven. And here's a little clean out door. And there are some baffles underneath there that force that smoke or fumes, whatever's left of it, to kind of snake around it to try to collect as much energy as possible. And then, of course, this is when this is closed, everything has to go around. And it has to force its way around so that the oven has time to take out as much heat as it can. I don't know if you could see it, but this oven is still at 350 degrees. And the fire's been out for a long time. So it goes down and goes across here, and then it turns and goes up the back of this. Now, when I got this, a lot of that stuff for back there was missing. And I had to remanufacture all that back. This was just a light piece of tin, and I put a much heavier piece of steel on there. And then I also built this box up the back that helps that warming oven stay warmer than what it used to even when it was brand new. So that oven up there, you could almost bake up there. It stays so nice and warm up there. Anyway, let me get a look at the back. It's just a square box, rectangle box on the back that goes and connects to it. On the back, where this is hooked up to the chimney, it's ran on a 6-inch pipe that ties into the masonry chimney. Now it has a separate flue from the wood-burning fireplace. 2 separate smokestacks, if you will, inside the masonry chimney. It is not tied directly into the smoke chamber of the fireplace. There's some, like, the things you need to understand is that a wood stove like this, cook stove, potbelly stove, they work on a different kind of draft than an open fireplace. So a wood stove requires pressure. It requires negative pressure, but pressure. It requires that there is suction and negative pressure that builds up. That's what keeps the smoke from billowing into the house. You will notice that from time to time when I had too many things opened up and it wasn't warm yet, smoke would be coming out into the room. That was because we didn't have any draft yet. Fireplaces work on flow. Yes, there's some draft, but it's more a larger flue, and there's a lot of flow going up the chimney. You don't necessarily have pressure building in high negative pressure, but you don't have negative pressure building in high or low numbers, you could say. So it's on a separate flue. If you was to tie this directly into the smoke chamber of that fireplace, it would not work properly, especially if I was using that. It would not work properly. It would also, if I was not burning a fire, it would cause creosote in the chimney, in the fireplace chimney, because when smoke travels into a larger compartment, it decreases in temperature. If you neck it down, it increases in temperature. So by traveling into a flue that's way too big for it, it would wind up building creosote in the flue if there was anything left in the smoke as it travels through. Well, thanks for coming along. I hope you enjoyed the beginning of that video about how an old American home might have looked. And for those of you that stuck around to the end, I hope you found this part educational, as far as like how these things are built. And I just think that the engineering of those days was so incredible and something that we rarely think about in today's world, because everybody's quick to turn a knob and have a fire and cook their meal and then get on to the rest of their life, where back in those days, cooking the meal was